The history of politics dates back as far as the time of Confucius, about 4,000 years ago. By then, humans had been playing music for 32,000 years already. Music has been enjoyed by every civilization throughout human history, so it's only natural that music and politics would join forces. From the military fife and drum corps, to the protest songs of Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, and Bob Dylan, to social consciousness of Public Enemy, NWA, and Killer Mike, music has been used as political propaganda and instrument of change for centuries. In 1976, the Ramones spread the word about teenage boredom leading to drug abuse. The following year, the Sex Pistols commanded young people to punk rock from its very start was inherently political. In 1978, Crass encouraged listeners to harness the power of music as a form of protest. In the early 80s, Crass label mate Conflict championed animal rights. The embryonic hardcore scene was taking off in the US. The Dead Kennedys mocked politics writ large. Bad Religion, Black Flag, Bad Brains, Fugazi, Reagan Youth, and many more sang about war, racism, oppression, and consumerism. The 90s saw the explosion of pop punk. The musical antithesis of hardcore, pop punk was more from the lineage of girl group covers by the Ramones. Silly, snarky, immature, calls to arms were replaced by songs about girls, skating, self-gratification, and toilet humor. At least those were the themes of the more commercially successful groups. But underground, the political pulse of punk was still faintly beating. Taking their cues from the socio-political awareness of the 80s, bands like Bikini Kill, Against Me, Dillinger 4, Pansy Division, and Propagandhi championed feminism, anarchism, prison reform, LGBTQ rights, and direct action. When one thinks of political punk bands, however, NoFX isn't typically at the top of anyone's list, with album titles such as Ribbed, White Trash, Two Hebes and a Bean, and Punkin' Drublic. But frontman Fat Mike Burkett told Spin magazine in 2024 that, quote, NoFX has always been a political band. Fat Mike and wife Erin founded Fat Records in 1990. Inspired by Brett Gurowitz's Epitaph Records, Fat Records embodied the DIY ethos and was created to help fellow punk bands get their music out there. In 1994, Fat Music for Fat People was released as a label sampler. As the label shed old bands and acquired new ones, another sampler became necessary, and Survival of the Fattest dropped in 1996, with further sequels hitting stores in 1997, 99, 2001, 2002, 2010, 2015, and 2016. The Fat Music Comp series featured new bands or new music from established bands and served as an introduction to so much otherwise inaccessible music. In 2003, the label put out their first benefit comp with proceeds going to PETA, and in 2004, Fat Wreck shifted from causes and issues to political action. Hi everybody, Brendan here with another edition of This Month in Punk Rock History. It's April 2025, and this month in punk rock history, we take a look at the Fat Wreck compilation Rock Against Bush, which hit record store shelves on April 20th, 2004. But first,
ladies and
this month in punk rock history, 60-second album review. Greetings from the underground.
The Sweet Jimmy Network. Yep, we're still here.
The year 2000, the most wasteful society in the history of the galaxy.
Ah, the 2000s. Wasn't that a simpler time? It began as a decade of optimism. We all survived the dreaded Y2K bug. The dot-com bubble hadn't yet burst, cell phones were indestructible, and Ricky Martin had us all living La Vida Loca. The year 2000 was an election year in the US, which concluded with the less than decisive victory of Texas Governor George W. Bush over Vice President Al Gore. The following September, the world changed, and it didn't take long for W to capitalize on the most devastating terrorist attacks in history and lead us into not one, but two protracted Middle East wars, ushering in a new conservative era which allowed us as Americans to come together to hate other nationalities instead of each other. In 2004, Americans were faced with a tough decision once more: Bush and Dick, or the two Johns. NoFX frontman Fat Mike Burkett knew who he didn't want, so he mobilized his Fat Records label to come out against George W. Bush's re-election. Burkett organized a tour and 2 compilations called Rock Against Bush, the first of which dropped on April 20th, 2004, and featured, quote, 26 bands that all think Bush Jr. is a boob, according to Fat Record's online store. In the aforementioned band interview with Spin, NoFX drummer Eric Smelly Sandin says, quote, Bush and Cheney really fired Mike up because he knew it was all fucking bullshit. In the band biography, Hepatitis Bathtub, Fat Mike says he was never a fan of George W. Bush and was disappointed when the 2000 election was won by a mere 500 votes. In 2002, the NoFX frontman had a light bulb moment. A typical NoFX show at that time drew a crowd of 2,000 plus people. If only a quarter of them had voted for Gore, Bush would have been sent packing back to Austin. So Burkett decided to use his platform and influence as punk rock celebrity to sway the voters of 2004. Fat Wreck enlisted the help of Scott Goodstein as political director and started the website punkvoter.com with the stated goal of registering young people to vote. Unlike MTV's Rock the Vote, which simply encouraged voter registration, punkvoter.com was clear on its intent to sway the election away from George W. Bush. In John Malkin's book, Goodstein, who helped pioneer the use of technology in community organizing and campaigning, writes, quote, It started as an internet campaign. We quickly built a roster of over 200 bands and 30 record labels, and registered as an official voter education organization and started doing campaign activities. Goodstein scored Burkett an invitation to a New York event with leaders of other grassroots groups, various celebrities, and activists. Here, in his powder blue suit and spiked hair, he met Michael Moore, Russell Simmons, and spent an hour talking to Bill Clinton's former Deputy Chief of Staff, Harold Ickes. Burkett recalls Ickes approaching him saying, quote, This is what we need, people like you to get into this. Goodstein echoes this in a 2009 NPR interview.
You wanted to translate the connection people felt into something that politicians could use. What do you think politicians have learned from that?
Originally, in 2004, I partnered up with a gentleman named Fat Mike from NoFX to create something called Punk Voter, and the politicians were afraid of us, and the politicians didn't know what to make of folks trying to organize in different communities, or feared, these kids with different hair colors. Didn't realize that these kids were fearing the same things that they were talking about, and while they looked different, maybe had different hair color, or were hanging out in different places, they were still dealing with credit card debt, worrying about the economy.
The website alone quickly drew in young new voters, and with the growing coalition of bands, labels, donors, and volunteers, Punk Voter made an appearance at South by Southwest and traveled with Warped Tour, setting up voter registration booths. One personal remembrance of the Reynolds Island date, which was published in Reed magazine, says, quote, I found the Punk Voter booth and registered to vote. I hadn't had a desire to vote until now, though I'm still kind of on the subject. But what the hell? I registered. I've been meaning to do it myself, but I've been so lazy about doing it, so I might as well have someone else send in the form for me. Plus, the girl at the booth was cute, so why not flirt with her? In April 2004, the first of 2 Rock Against Bush CDs went on sale. The CD featured rare or previously unreleased tracks by bands such as Sum 41, Against Me, Descendants, Ministry, and of course, NoFX. A companion DVD featured trailers for Lefty documentaries, entries in the MoveOn.org sponsored Bush in 30 Seconds ad contest, a handful of music videos, and a quick hit from comedian David Cross. Proceeds from the $6 CD-DVD package went back into the organization to help spread the word. Shortly after the release of Volume 1, NoFX broke their own policy of snubbing mainstream media, starting with a cover story in Alternative Press magazine, complete with nude photography a la Dixie Chicks 2003. In the article, Fat Mike explains the band's boycott of mainstream media and justification for breaking their silence. He says, quote, because we think it's the right time to start using the mainstream media for our own political agenda, where we felt we were being used back in the 90s. People were trying to get cred by interviewing NoFX, so we stopped doing interviews. And what is that agenda, you may ask? Well, unless you've skipped this entire video until now, it should be clear. Our political agenda is, by the way, to get rid of Bush. Fat Mike did interviews with CNN, Howard Stern, Dennis Miller, and others.
My next guests are here with a song from their new album entitled The War on Errorism. Please welcome NoFX.
And the band performed on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, where they first agreed to behave and self-censor, and then reneged on the deal during their performance of Franco Un-American, during which Fat Mike switched up some of the lyrics.
We all know George Bush is an imbecile. He loves but he hates homosexuals. We're sick and tired of the embarrassment. The whole world wants us to get a better president.
Conan didn't seem too amused, but still quipped,
They're going to be appearing at the end of the month at the Republican National Convention. Watch for them then. No FX. We'll be right back. Stick around.
This was all going on amidst a busy touring schedule for the band, not only to promote their latest album, The War on Errorism, but also part of a tour to promote Punk Voter and the Rock Against Bush Volume 1 comp. The tour featured NoFX, Alkaline Trio, Authority Zero, and Jello Biafra doing a quick 20-minute spoken word set. Primarily focused on the West Coast and Southwest, several dates were booked for college campuses in order to more precisely hit the target demographic. Reportedly, none of the bands were paid, and all proceeds went back to the campaign. In August, Fat Wreck dropped Rock Against Bush Volume 2. Debuting at number 2 on the Billboard Independent chart, Volume 2 features 28 more Bush-hating bands, including such punk and non-punk heavyweights as Bad Religion, Dropkick Murphys, Foo Fighters, Green Day, No Doubt, Operation Ivy, and Slater-Kenny. 20 tracks on the disc were previously unreleased. Like its predecessor, Volume 2 comes with a bonus DVD featuring anti-W shorts, documentary trailers, music videos, and some quick comic barbs from Will Ferrell, Patton Oswalt, and Greg Proops. November 2nd, 2004.
My opponent talks about sexual sanity. His record does not match his rhetoric.
The whole Punk Voter crew, except Biafra, gathered at Fat Mike's home for an election party.
Get hungry in the middle of the night. There's an open beer in the fridge.
He recalls having 2 shot glasses full of drugs. Ecstasy if Bush loses, and Valium if Bush wins. Spoiler alert, John Kerry did not defeat George W. Bush's bid for a second term. Unless you think Jello Biafra a party pooper, he intended to show, but couldn't find Burkett's house. After the party, I checked my phone and had 4 missed calls and a message from him asking, "What's your address?" Now, what would any good political movement be without its detractors? Alternative Press reports the announcement of the Punk Voter website, which was posted to punknews.org, invited a, quote, vicious, scathing response in the comment section, leading the typically unflappable Fat Mike to respond, quote, "Well, sure, it bothers everyone when people talk shit about you and write shit about you. It's painful sometimes. I don't think I came across as an idiot, and I don't think I'm wasting my time. I think I'm doing something. So when people give me shit and tell me to stay out of politics, it's ludicrous, and it bothers me. It doesn't really hurt my feelings so much as it annoys me." One Maximum Rock and Roll columnist called the entire campaign, quote, extremely short-sighted, while another one writes, quote, "The whole thing reeks of a publicity stunt and an excuse to flog some merch." Counterpunch and Rancid News called Punk Voter, quote, simply a tool for the Democrats. Counterpunch goes on to call the campaign, quote, a huge misdirection of time and energy. Canadian Punk's Propaganda recorded a song for the comp, but a disagreement between the band and Fat Mike left the track on the cutting room floor due to the band's refusal to compromise on liner notes taking a dig at Illuminati CEO George Soros. Propaganda put out a statement saying Fat Mike refused to include the track. Fat Mike countered with his own statement claiming a preference to, quote, not make enemies within the movement. In his statement, Burkett claims to have offered Propaganda a slot on Volume 2, but the Canucks declined, stating their politics, which criticize the American process at large, just don't mesh with the message of this campaign. And as Propaganda sought to distance themselves from the entire spectrum of American party politics, ex-misfit Bobby Steele and his new band The Undead teamed up with American Streak Records to put out Crush Carry, a conservative punk compilation, which features 11 songs by some of the more obscure names in punk at the time, most of whom went on to do literally nothing else. While the Fat Wreck movement ultimately failed to achieve its goal of preventing a second term for W, it is hard to attribute the Republican victory to Bobby Steele. Burkett reports the entirety of the campaign's fundraising proceeds went back into the campaign, so when the IRS came calling with a bill for $300,000 in owed taxes, he was caught a bit off guard. He explains that because the group had a partisan agenda of registering people to vote against Bush, they were considered a 527 group and therefore not tax-exempt. When Fat Mike decided he was no longer interested in recruiting the youth of America to get politically involved, he neglected to inform anyone else on the team.
And then Fat Mike, without consulting any of the rest of us, I was involved. I went on the Rock Against Bush tour.
1 hour later.
Anyway, maybe about a year later, there was a big old Sunday thing, interview with Fat Mike in the San Francisco Chronicle, where he announced the end of Punk Voter. Didn't ask any of us if we wanted to continue it without him and just keep the momentum rolling, whatever, and he called it a failure. Punk Voter was not a failure.
SFGate reports the 2 volumes combined for 650,000 discs sold, and that punkvoter.com got 15 million hits a month at its peak. In Hepatitis Bathtub, Burkett claims the website raised over $1 million, much of which was spent on anti-Bush magazine ads and billboards in the swing state of Ohio. Rock Against Bush Volume 1 reached Billboard's top spot on the independent album charts, and Volume 2 debuted at number 2. For Punk Planet, Mark Anderson of punk activist group Positive Force DC spoke with Fat Mike later in the year. Burkett says he was, quote, a little numb the next day, but the election night party with drugs and hugs was therapeutic. Despite the Republican win, Burkett doesn't call Punk Voter's effort a failure. I feel like we've accomplished everything we set out to do. We just didn't win, he says. We still got a few 100,000 kids involved, and our generation voted for Kerry more than any other age group. He goes on to say there are no plans for Volume 3, but that the website would remain live with regular updates. When asked about a Punk Voter 2008 campaign, Burkett told SFGate, I did my work, I did my job, but politics is not my career. I have a record label, a recording studio, a magazine, 2 bands, a daughter, and a poker and golf habit, and maybe a TV show. Huffington Post Canada reports Punk Voter registered thousands of voters and contributed to the largest increase in young voter turnout since 1972. Over 20 million young people voted in 2004, a remarkable 10% increase over the previous election. Exactly how many of those were direct results of Punk Voter efforts is unclear, but in Hepatitis Bathtub, Burkett claims to have registered tens of thousands. Mike Park of Skank and Pickle, the Bruce Lee Band, and Asian Man Records, among other ventures, defended the movement and its leader. In the aforementioned Rancid News article, Park says Mike's only goal was to get a change of office. Whether it had been Donald Duck or Snoopy, he realized the only way to do that was to push John Kerry. Not Ralph Nader, not Leonard Peltier. Obviously, Fat Mike did not achieve all the goals he set for Punk Voter, and the exact quantifiable success seems to vary with every retelling. But Punk Voter, Fat Mike, NoFX, and Fat Records reinvigorated the political soul of punk. Fat Mike pretty much retired from politics following the 2004 election, and the website, while still viewable, is effectively dead. NoFX continued to infuse politics into its unique brand of skate punk, and bands like Green Day and Against Me bashed the system and promoted anarchism. In the early 2000s, we learned that politics can be serious, obnoxious, and catchy all at the same time. So that's it for our look at Rock Against Bush and the Punk Voter movement. Who did you vote for in 2004? Let us know in the comments section. While there, feel free to start an unwinnable argument over the politics of today. You could also tell us how much you liked this month's video and offer any other comments, corrections, or criticism. It's summer vacation here at Punk Rock History HQ, so come back in August when we go goth with Bauhaus. For this month in Punk Rock History, I'm Brendan McCabe.
I'm George W. Bush, and I approve this message.